light at the end in case of emergency. End of this first corridor behind the elevators is the exit. Down. And yeah, so happens. Just like to acknowledge that we meet on people and we pay our respects to the member pro community. I'm Andrew Young. I'm a technical specialist at Ticket Data. Feel free to connect with me on various things that I'm in. And we've got Adam, the resource solution architect that subsets the Microsoft AI focus. Constantly contact on adamfowlerit.com. Enabling on your LinkedIn as well. So if you like. Thanks to our sponsors, Microsoft and Venue, systemic IT consulting for Meetup group, started for some swag, and myself, self-plug there for some of the refreshments outside. Okay, so we'll jump into it. What's new, what's coming. So in the productivity space, we've got reactions in Town Hall primarily on animation, but if you look in the right there, you can see the feed of faces, love hearts, thumbs. So what you'd normally see on like the online webinar live events, like on Ignite, for example, when they do the web page embedded video, we've got that experience now as well. The Teams app is more unified in that you can now sign in with your work, personal, and education accounts. With us bringing it into one single app, though, yeah. Right? So it's being the two to three, yes. And you can also see here, it will pop up an extra window for the other account. So it just means you're managing the one sign-in, I guess. And on top of that, you can select the actual account you want to join a meeting with. As you click onto the join button on the calendar, so you've got multiple accounts signed in. This is handy. Right, and the Windows app is going to be GA soon, so generally available in our spring, and that's going to be yet another app. This is going to pull together the old remote desktop and that, so you can get straight to your Windows 365 cloud PCs. Assume as your virtual desktop and some of those apps you see there. Stay tuned for that one. Windows 365 third birthday or anniversary, what do you want to call it? It's been around for a while now. They've just released the graphics card VMs for those. So through Enterprise and Frontline, you can get these three tiers. They're the same across Enterprise and Frontline, but essentially you'll get that extra graphical processing power, leads to being able to run some local AI processing as well. Right, straight away, we'll go to Intune. So there's going to be expanded support for this Microsoft managed home screen. This is on your mobile devices, so here, so you got your specified apps and whatnot, layouts and all that, and a restricted settings. So you're only going to see certain things you can toggle there for your users. Realize I'm standing away from my speaker notes, so I have no idea what I was going to say. Endpoint analytics is coming. So there's going to be a resource performance stats, so you can see what exactly on your endpoints is causing whatever issues or where the performance is dropping off in whether it's CPU or RAM. And then there's additional settings coming for the soon Mac OS 15 and iPad OS 18. So this will cover things like new AI-related features coming in the new devices that'll be announced next Tuesday, Wednesday. So got their foot ahead of that one. Security news, we've got mandatory Azure MFA starting October. So this is for the Azure Portal, Entra ID Admin Center, and the Intune Admin Center. So if you've got admin accounts for those, you need to set up MFA. Otherwise, it's going to be awkward when it rolls around and you don't have access. Or you have break glass accounts that never had MFA set up. You're going to want to set something up for them, be it like a physical token, passwordless, or whatever option you can come with. But then, yeah, starting next year, the rest of those Azure-related tools will get the same treatment. So ensuring that all your, highly privileged accounts are protected. More in security, so Defender for Identity, the PowerShell module is getting an update. These new commands, so you can create a new group managed service accounts. You can force it to be a standard account, as well as being specific in what endpoint server you're targeting when you're doing your configurations. Out there, but MDI is probably useful for a lot of places still using an on-premise Active Directory where accounts are getting synced up to Office 365. Segue to that is, if you're doing the syncing through Entra Connect, the Defender endpoint is now going to be able to do a bunch of extra things. So any vicious logons, but you shouldn't be logging on locally to a sync server, ideally after the configuration is done. And if there's any suspicious activity based on sensitive users and stuff like that, and there's going to be extra recommendations added to the secure score. So if you've not seen the security portal, this is going to provide you certain steps you can take to increase a scaled score that gives you an idea of what you should be setting up and protecting to kind of be at a baseline compared to like other businesses your size. It's fuzzy there, but you'll see that they've added in those recommendations by now. Defender for Identity. Okay, moving on. Face check is now generally available, so this is part of the Entra ID.
As more transactions turn digital, verifying users' real-world identity is crucial to keeping individuals and organizations safe and secure. Anyone can create a convincing fake photo or video. And in today's world of generative AI, it's easier than ever. So how can you really know who you're talking to? And how can other people and the services you use know that you are really you? With Microsoft Entra Verified ID, there's a better way to verify a person's real-world identity. Imagine verifying the identity of a new employee and onboarding them remotely in minutes instead of days or weeks. Or solving a customer's help desk complaint without first making them answer which photo contains a bicycle, where they went to high school, or the street name of their childhood home. Verified ID makes it possible for users to verify their information just once. Then they can easily use that verified credential to access apps and services in both their personal life and at work without having to risk their privacy. Organizations can quickly and confidently verify this information in a customized flow without compromising on security or compliance. For example, many background checks today require someone to show up to a physical location to show their government ID to prove their identity. With Verified ID, it can be done securely right from their phone, wherever they are. We partner with leading verification providers to digitize physical credentials around the world using a standards-based approach. To make sure a government ID belongs to the person who presented it, all that is needed is a quick selfie. Face check with Microsoft Entra Verified ID, powered by Azure AI Services, performs real-time facial matching against a photo on their identity document. From now on, whenever a person represents themselves on the internet, such as LinkedIn, conference calls, or a help desk, you can be confident it's truly them. Like all verified ID transactions, Face Check with Microsoft Entra Verified ID keeps personal data safe in the user's hands. The organization sees only the results of the verification, so no sensitive information is passed or stored. With Microsoft Entra Verified ID, organizations can verify important user credentials securely, simply, and at scale, with an easy-to-use flow that people can trust. It's time for a better way to verify.
So, So yeah, a bit of security training. So there are these ninja training courses. They're all posted on the tech community blog. So there's a curated list of all the links to the Microsoft Learn, some videos and all that. And at the end of it, there's a assessment through Microsoft Forms. So if you go through all that, you'll get a little certificate completion. And there's some extra videos as well you can jump onto. But once you go through all that, there's the ebook here, the cloud native app protection policies. That's the next kind of gradual step you take after you've mastered Defenders instance of. And speaking of Microsoft Learn, we've got, so they've finally done the announcement for the 30-day plans and those topics across AI, security, and data. They've not provided the 50% off exam thing at the completion of it within the 30 days. So sadness around, but yeah, the plans are still good. The curated learning modules for those topics. And of course, there's expert zone for really any Microsoft product and some more. So with Microsoft badges you can get from that as well. And the partners out in the world, there's the Level Up CSP program, which replaces the CSP Masters. So if you're a partner and you need some enablement, there's plenty of skilling training videos on. Hey, try to bring this up every time. So the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador Program, offshoot of the Microsoft Most Valued Professional Program. So this focuses on students in the tertiary higher learning, so uni, TAFE, preferably doing IT of some sort. And if you sign up to this course, you join a Discord server, there's benefits off the bat there, so access to Visual Studio, M365, some Azure credits, and then you get given like these little tasks or objectives to do, so running community programs and stuff like that. And once you do hit a certain threshold, you get the beta award, and then you get shipped a nice box of these little goodies that we don't get anymore as MVPs. So, but once you go a bit more above and beyond, you get the gold badge, and then you get access to mentorship through MVP program, and you get a foot in the door to become an MVP as well. So it's a good head start to your career. Noticing for the attendees recently that they're all at the end of the learning tenure, so trying to get this out there sooner so that they can jump onto it while they're actively still learning and studying, so it's not more of an afterthought. And leading into that is the Microsoft Student Accelerator Meetup. So still trying to organize something for Adelaide. I've been provided some contacts around the Flinders Uni and people at Microsoft as well. So trying to tee up some speakers, venues, something I guess, and we'll get something happening hopefully this calendar year. Worst case, early next year, hopefully. And yeah, just run through our user groups locally in Adelaide. So we've got our user group here, the Copilot user group is on the first Wednesdays, the M365 user group on the third Tuesdays, the Azure user groups the second Tuesdays, and I'm not going to try and remember the other three. I think Power BI and Fabric may have merged with a different user group now, but yeah, .NET, David does his at the uni, and I'm not sure he does his anymore. And we did float the idea of a security user group, but maybe a next year thing. We do try to cover some security in our topics, so if there is a separate group, then I'm sure there's still overlapping topics we can present on.
Well, that one must be so secure you couldn't tell anyone where and when it was.
Maybe that's the case. Yeah, it's a thesis. And there's a LinkedIn page. There's a meetup group. Right, so what's coming around the world, and here mostly, Power Platform Conference is in a couple of weeks. That's in Vegas. We've got a CompTIA community meeting coming up on 20th. That's Friday, I think. That's going to be held at the newly opened Marriott Hotel. So it's on King William that way. It'd be nice to check that out. Ignite/Inspire is in Chicago later the year. But developers. Adelaide coming up end of November. The AI tour from Microsoft's coming back, but only Sydney this time. 11th of December, and we've got early bird for the Digital Workplace Conference in New Zealand next March. And for us, got Anthony Quarter next month to present on Intune remediations. And we've got Charles coming back for some Entra private access. I'm going to try and flesh it out into a more Entra suite topic, but see what he comes up with first. And in December, we'll try and do a joint user group thing because it's Christmas and it's just after Ignite, so hopefully we've got some spicy content that time frame. Well, as always, if you got any topics you're requesting or want to present on, use the form or hit us up directly, please. All right, so move on now. So this will be a redo of my Digital Workplace Conference topic presentation. You didn't want me to introduce you? Okay, that's all right. Oh, you can introduce that's right. Me. Oh, well. I've got the clicker. All right. So straight into it. So I've come from working in AMITPC for over a decade. So one of the things I ended up doing towards the later stages of that tenure was to create a flow that kicks off when someone clicks a button and they've filled in some details, and then it creates a team in Microsoft Teams. This was predominantly for a security incident response kind of approach. So click a button, quick notes, and a team pops up, grabs all the people, sticks them in. Good times. And while Microsoft Teams does get a bunch of these standard templates, they're not very customizable or not very flexible. So you get 15 or so to choose from, these pre-built ones, and you can then manually add in owners and members, but you can't do much else besides add tabs. So we wanted to create extra channels, specifically private channels, automatically, and actually add people to them. Because if you're going to add external people into the general channel, you don't want them to see things like discussed internally. So that was the main challenge. And then later on, it was getting other things created at the same time. So having multiple layers of here's a group, here's another group underneath, because we know private channels are a separate SharePoint site behind the scenes. So it's another access control list you got to manage. But through this, we were able to just spin these up in a matter of seconds, maybe. And there is an approval process that you can't do with these. So that's where we introduced Stella. So being able to automate end-to-end the creation, adding of members and owners, having a custom naming convention on top of what you may get out of the Entra portal. So you can have things like prefixes or suffixes and banned words from your Teams names. But with this, you can just stick in whatever you prefer and then let it apply the rest of those naming conventions for you. And using the native approval system in Power Automate, that was able to then send messages and emails and all that to notify the rest of the team, hey, this team's been created due to this incident, here's the reference number, blah, blah, blah. And then you can do other things or extend it further with other connectors. So finally, before I put together these slides, I met up with some colleagues and we were talking about food and cooking and stuff. So I guess that's how the whole theme came along with cooking. So your recipe, we want to include the ingredients, the method, and serving suggestions as usual. So starting with the ingredients, the main things used to create the solution. Obviously Power Platform because we're using Power Automate, but having environments in your Power Platform. So I'm going to jump into some preferred practices and stuff like that. So when you do access Power platform or any of the Power Automate's Power Apps. Initially, you get the default environment. This is kind of a sandbox that everyone in the business can access and do whatever they want to it. There's no management. It's kind of like a scary place that you've got to put production data. And then we talk about Dataverse, which is used to be called Common Data Model.
That's right.
Yeah, so it sounds awkward.
Very similar.
Yeah, it was common data, but yeah, so it's now the database that stores the information in tables and such for your environments in Power Platform and Dynamics 365. So the whole business application cloud relies on Dataverse essentially behind the scenes. And then obviously there's licensing. So we're going to be touching on some premium connectors because there are some things you don't get out of the box with a M365 license. And afterwards we've got identity. So the way you run a flow, there has to be an account or something attached to, say, the connection. So you're authenticating essentially to something that has a lot of access. So in our case, it's the Entra ID or the Azure ID directory, because that's where all your users and groups are. So having a service account on a flow is better than having just a regular user, because if people move on, flows are going to be attached to that user, and if password changes or their account gets deactivated or whatever happens to that account, the flow will then fail, and then sad times. So having a dedicated service account, you can kind of let that go with a rather secure password, and the conditional access will let you choose your own method there. But being able to have a service account that doesn't expire, or that you don't have to manage the account and the flows keep working, that's kind of a good thing. On top of that, we've got things called service principals. So these are not user accounts. You go into the Entra portal when you create an app registration. So it's like a user account, but userless account. And this ties in the connection to Dataverse. So your flows can actually connect, and you're authenticated through the service principal. It does help when you're doing things like moving from multiple environments, so from dev to test to production. Your service principal and the other connections you have, they can kind of pass through. So you've got a nice little pipeline there to get your apps and other things updated. And then obviously there's RBAC, so role-based access control. So the right people in the right groups having access to do certain things or be involved in, say, being added to the team that gets created. So if it's a security incident, you've got the security team getting added to the team for that event. And then Power Automate itself, and doubling up there on Power Platform stuff. But yeah, the service connections we mentioned there. So each connector has to connect to an account or a principal through the flow, and then the flows themselves, obviously. But we can go through and say, hey, there's parent flows and child flows. So we'll go into that the demo shortly. Kind of separating out the common actions or repeated actions into a child flow, so that doesn't clog up the parent flow, things like that. And then the approval process itself, so being able to assign this to a group of people as well. So first in, like, whoever approves it, it goes, or you can wait for everyone in that group to approve it first, and then show time. So yeah, going back to the whole food topic, that's where we go in here. So the word, that term we actually talked about that night was mise en place. So it's when you gather all your ingredients next to where you're cooking, so that everything's within reach, and it's quick to fire. Stuff burns real easily, but that's I think that's about it in terms of the cooking theme. So moving on, demo time. So thanks ChatGPT for praying to the demo goddess image there. Do an awkward transition to my screen. Feel free to hit me up with any questions. I'll try to answer as best as possible, bearing in mind I'm not really a BizApps person.
I like it how you're crying already.
Yes,
You picture it. It's gonna work. It's gonna work.
Yeah, so when I did the presentation last time, the actual approval thing didn't fire off, so I imagine the same thing's going to happen here. They made some minor changes based on feedback after that presentation, so but never not. All right, so I think actually I should be able to just yeah. All right, I'm gonna talk this way. All right, so go through the identity portal first. It's there. Now, I've talked about service principles before. Jump down here. There's a friendly reminder about the enforced MFA coming to the Entry Admin Center. Just jump in. Yeah, so when you come into the app registrations and you create one, I'll do another page actually, but I'll run for this one first. So this existing one, you can see that there's a name for it that you give it. It's got an application ID, object ID, there's the tenant ID for this tenant. And then you can see that I've created one secret for it. It's much more secure than the password. We're not using a certificate, and you can set up these URIs if you need to. Permissions. Yeah, so this guy here, I've given it access to Dynamics and the Graph API. So that's access to all the users and groups, and then also access to the Dataverse environment. So that's what the Dynamics API there is for. So making sure that it's got at least read or impersonation, that one there. And then,
Data services.
sorry?
Common data service it was.
Yes. I think I said model, but it's based on the model. So and yeah, it's in the certs and secrets. Yeah, so when you just be careful when you're setting this up, because once you do create the secret, you can only grab the actual value once before you leave the screen. So if you mess up, you have to create a new secret. But yeah, the ID is available for you. So if you copy that out, save it somewhere securely, at least someone that's backed up. Yeah, although Notepad does save stuff now, funnily enough. It's not recommended. It can get you out of bind once or twice, but yeah, recommend a password manager or something like that. That was that. Out of the way.
Oh, you've got the moving toolbar.
Yeah, what a concept. That was service principle. Jumping into, sorry, this one. Talk about solutions. So in the Power Platform, you have these kind of virtual or logical containers called solutions. So everything pertaining to a certain app or process or whatnot, you can store it all in this kind of container. It makes it easier to know what you've added or changed during your development process. So
versions save along the way, even though it's not finished. Very useful solution.
Don't know if anger or not there.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
It's better than doing it out of a solution. If you want to develop anything, do it in a solution. So you play with the versions, and
yeah, and
you don't want to develop it outside of the solution. That's where the anger comes from.
So, yeah, Gavin's seen some stuff. You can also export these solutions and import them into another tenant and all that. So you got an extra test environment. You can always throw it in there as well. So I've created this one here. Jump in. Blame it on the guest wireless. So it takes its time. So you can see in the list here, these are all the things that are usually related to a solution. So any apps you create, bots, choices, flows, connections, and then all the tables that we've created and used in this. So let's just quickly look at this one. So table basically is rows and columns, and your fields that go in them. So once they're populated, you've got data. This is more of a structured model. So what I've done here with team detail, not a great look because that's not a view that I want to use. Views are ways you filter out the data or the rows and columns. So any specific columns you want to include or exclude, just makes it tidier for people who are looking at your data through here. But we jump in, this is the view itself. So there's a column for team name. So whatever name you've entered will get stored in this column. And that's essentially all I've done in view. Makes sense if I show you the form as well. So let's jump back to form. So at the time, Microsoft Forms was what I decided to use. You can use whatever method of information gathering you like. That way. I know what I've done. I've created the form in a different account because when I created the flow, I used my admin account instead of the service account. Generally, you create a flow and you're trying to add a form account that you're signing with. When I see the forms that it's assigned to or created, that's no, all right, that's fine. I will bring that up in a moment. So pretend that I've shown you the form. Generally, the rest of the details should go in here. I've got columns. So there we go. So there's the team names, the primary column that I've got there. And then requester will be whoever filled in or submitted the form. That will get included as part of the communications. We've got team type. Because I've wanted to show you that you can go, hey, you get multiple templates created this way. So we've got the security incident response team, and I've also got a new user or new employee onboarding option as well. Back in my old job, we had a security policy related team. So each time you create one, it would generate documents as well. And back in here, but the ID, so the unique ID per row in your table here, and that was that for that one. And look at the user column. I just grabbed the built-in system user table, so this is going to pick up the user accounts in your tenant. So then when they're requesting these teams, it's going to be able to go, hey, it's this person. And then in choices, around here a bit. These ones here in this section, they're global choices, so you can use these across multiple tables and leave solutions, and you set the label, display name, and then the value. So it's so long as you got the value, you can use those options in a flow dependent on what they pick. So let's jump into here again on the team type, which is a choice. Down here, I've got it synced with the global choice, and there it is there. So any questions before I move on and I buy time for myself? Silence doesn't help. Also not the service account. I should have touched more wood before, Gavin.
Oh my God.
I don't remember what I called it. It's make sure you call your account something that you easy to remember, or at least record it somewhere. Yeah, so here's the service account I created. Good segue because I didn't touch on this before, but we did assign a license. So I've grabbed a Power Automate Premium license. So this will give you access to all those premium connectors, or the ones with a little diamond jewel icon next to them. So anything to do with APIs and Dataverse is going to need a premium connector. So let's grab. Well, I don't remember the password.
Just a ordinary app platform license, or is it?
That was a premium one. So they changed all the naming conventions again on your licensing. So it used to be per user, per flow. I think the premium supersedes per flow.
Okay.
Or one of them. But this lets you do the same actions as those ones. Glad that didn't open up on the shared screen. Right, well, for the sake of making this happen, I'm just going to reset it. Actually, no, I shouldn't do that. Let's not do that. Let's go back in here. I'm pretty sure I shared it with myself, actually. Unless I've done something horrible and not. Never mind. All right. Well, form was pretty simple. It was name of the team and what type of team, and then that gets picked up. So jump into the flow itself afterwards. But here are some of the connections. So I mentioned before, so the account that you sign in with. So I've got my admin account signed into some stuff here, but the service account itself, down here in Teams, Office 365 users, groups and stuff. But then there's that service principal we talked about before, having access to Dataverse. Here's flow 0. So I've created this one as a triggered flow from that form. So anytime there's a new form submission for a new team, then that's grabbed all the details out of it. Might be a superfluous step. I do it anyway just for sanity checking myself. Then we want to create a variable. So this is an empty variable, just integer, so it's a number. Come into that why I've done that. So let's add a little bit. So this guy here is a switch, so it's one of those other actions. It's similar to a condition, but it's when you have more than one pair of paths you can take. So here we've got, is it a security incident response team, or is it a new employee onboarding? And then you got a default path, which I haven't really developed out, but ideally it's going to be one of these or any subsequent ones you add. So if you're going to do it this method with this method where you have global choices, it's a bit clunkier in that each time you need to add an extra template, you're adding an extra switch option, you're adding another global choice. That was one of the feedback pieces of feedback from the event, was stick it to a table. But we'll go through this one anyway because I went for the pain initially first time I did it, so we'll share it with you again. So we're setting that variable to whatever the number we saw before, so that value in choice, which I left it open, that value here that we had. So making sure you exclude the commas, that becomes an integer value there. So if that selection in the form should be a drop down. So if they've selected one or the other, it's going to pass through the text, and if it equals that one or that one, it's going to update the variable with that number. And that's pretty much the base amount of information it needs before it creates a row in that table for the team details. The name, got who submitted it, the type of team. Ignore that one for now. Come back to that one, but that's pretty much it for this first flow, which creates the record in Dataverse. And then my second flow is triggered when a new role is added to that table. So whenever a new submissions come through, it's going to kick off. It's going to then grab user profile of the person that requested the new team. And then we've got a bunch of variables here. So just focus on the first three. So we've got that string now for the approvers group, name of the people who are going to be approving whether this team gets credit or not. Got this team type string from before, and then a string of groups. Okay, may have been a double up there. But approvers and the actual team type come out of these two, and that afterwards. But same thing again. We've got to switch. So this time, when it comes down here and it's detected whether it's that team type or that one, we're actually grabbing the approvers group. So this one I've just done manually here. But if it's going to be the security group, it's going to be the same group ID every time. So I've just popped it in there, and then you're updating the other variables to that. Tell I'm familiar with this because it's been a month since I actually showed you this last time, but essentially we're updating these properties to then go down here. This is where we get that group ID. So the groups connector, grabbing that ID that we plugged in before. So rather than just plugging it in here, because it's going to be dependent on which path we go down. So we've grabbed the ID from there, stuck it in here, and then throwing it into a apply to each. So each member of that group, we're now adding. Well, we're grabbing the email address and adding it to another variable. So that's why there was a separate approvers variable there. This one contains all the email addresses, all the user principal name, because it's the same, should be the same in that instance. So then when you create this approval process next, you can then whack in that list of all the email addresses from that approvers list. And you can set whether it's going to be the first person to respond or if you want everyone in that list to hit respond first. And there we have just the name of the approval request. So you can, whatever you like in here, it's fairly basic. New request, his name. And then the details is so-and-so has requested this type of team with that name. You can word that however you like. And that comes up in their teams. So this next step just waits for this approval to get an outcome, really. So if I jump in here, I try one just yet, but we'll jump into this one here. So when you do get an approval through Teams, do the obnoxious notification, the binging, the red flags, and all that stuff. This one says approved, but it should say pending. There's a new one, and you see that there's a text we saw before. So someone has requested this team type. Clearly, I've put the wrong variable in there. You get the idea, and then someone is going to come through and click approve or decline, and then it updates this. So you also receive an email and Outlook with a similar kind of appearance. So it's wherever you hit it first, and it's going to update it across the board for everyone else in that list of approvers. Jump back in and so based on the outcome, if it is approved, then we go down this yes path, and this is where I've stuck that child flow we were talking about before. Child flow does need to be created before parent flow, funnily enough, but you are creating like the values that you're going to pass through to the child flow here. So you select the child flow, and then, hey, I want to pass through the name of the team and the type of the team. So at this point, this flow kind of gets in a pending state. jump over now. This is my child flow. It's a manually triggered flow, and it's pulling in those values that we expect, which are the team name and the team type. Again, we're initializing more variables, so you got your group members and this fun bit of JSON, so JavaScript object notation. And then iteration index, so it's more of a, this one's a counter, so come to that. So one of the built-in connectors is Microsoft Teams connector. You can create a team with this easily enough. There's a type, there's a name, description, and then you can add in who your owners are. So adding in that team or specific person here in this case. So just adding in the GUID from my admin account. So including certain admins or other owners to that team, and giving it a short delay to let things happen, settle, and because if it can't find something, it's going to have a bad time. So 30 seconds is generally enough for the team to finish creating itself, the 365 group behind the scenes, the admins, the owners, and then we'll come to that all friend switch again. So based on the type, we're now setting the members. So that is grabbing the security group there, that's grabbing the HR group, that's just the GUIDs for the groups. Again, we're grabbing the members, similar process. May see some repetition here. And then, yeah, so, for each, we're grabbing all those people we just grabbed from either the security or the HR teams, and we're adding them to the team. So it's going to run through each person. It's going to do the same thing. We're adding you to this team, and then grabbing their profile. Was a good reason why I've grabbed their ID, so it's their user ID. This increment variables is iteration index. I go through each time, each member, and do a count. So you could have 1 to 10 people in this group, who knows? It's going to keep counting, and on the last one, if there's no more after that, it's going to stop this loop through all the users. Because what it's doing is each time it runs through this, it's building out this JSON, which is saying this person is an owner or they're a member. So building out a bigger JSON with these snippets of JSON to say this person's a member, that's their user ID or user GUID in enter ID. And then in here, this is where that iteration index comes in again. So if it's equal to the number of members of that group, then stop. But also make it so that it's the last one. So slight difference. What I've done here, I believe I've back up here. Maybe in one of those functions. Ideally in an array, which is what that variable is. You can have multiple rows of information in there. So each user it runs past in this for each loop, it's going to then whack on a semicolon somewhere. Something's changed, but ideally, yes, if it's not the last user in that list, it's going to add a semicolon, so it goes to the next one and so on. If it's the last one, we don't add the semicolon because it's going to break the JSON schema that way. So then once that's all done, is that, I don't know what I did. Yeah, I got rid of that because then I could just whack it all into the one members lab here. So once it's all run through, we've got all the members, it just replaces that section there. You've got a huge list of JSON, and then it goes and sends a graph request. So this one didn't used to exist. So that's why I had a more complicated flow in the past, which was the premium HTTP connector. So you had to build out the URI, same post method and body and all that, but there was an extra step. So you have to set up like more secrets and IDs and other stuff like that. So having this now natively in Teams connector saves a bit of time. But yeah, you're grabbing that JSON that you composed up here, whacking it in here, and when that runs, it should then go through, create the, I've done here, private channel. and then it's going to add all those members into that as well. So it's a double step process of creating the base team, adding everyone to that, creating the channel, adding everyone to that, and then when it successfully goes through all of that, it's going to respond back to the previous parent flow. This child flow ends, jump back in here, and it should send an email, or you can send a Teams message, or whatever method of communications you want, and just say, hey, it was successfully created, etc. Else, if it was declined, it'd go down this other path and send a different email to say it was declined. Too bad, so sad. I feel like I went through that fairly quickly. Yeah. So, assuming we've gone through end to end, the form, flows, the team. We've touched on it before. What happens if you want to add extra templates or different types of teams? So, following the advice of a only is apps person, we've created a table here. So just call it team type, and we save my view there, but columns. All right, so name of the team type, so template, you can call it whatever you want here. So it's where the security incident or Neo, that's where that comes in. And the unique identifier, description, so that people who come in know what it is and what it's for. And then the approvers, just a text line. I think that's for where you enter the group name, and then that you can pull out the group ID afterwards for a lookup. I think I also did back in this original team detail table, that new team type, I just call it type just to be able to tell the difference. This one's created as a lookup column, so looking at that new team type table. So this is going to link the base table to the other table. So if I just want one row here, or say, hey, it's a new this type of team, it's going to look up what's in that column there or that field, and then jumps across to that table down here and picks up some additional information. So stuff that wasn't in there. So it's related tables and that fun. So if we jump back into the flow, light it up here. That one. So down here. So if we are ignoring the old team type, which was a variable because of the global choice value, we can now go, instead of doing that, we just straight up put in whatever the type was in the form. And then it goes into this field here, so the lookup, and it's going to understand that it's a lookup. So when we do this bit here, the next flow runs, we've got some extra variables here, so that we're grabbing the ID of that type, so the row in that type table, and we're also grabbing a prover's ID as well that we've whacked in. So in this scope that I've hidden here, now that we have a extra table for the type, we're getting that row that we've just created, and then we're also expanding that query, so via that new type lookup column. Okay, and what that does is it opens up your dynamic variable list to extra options. So see in the thing there, you've got, not very helpful, but type and then team type. So it's the type table, and then that's the team type field. So this is how you get to other information from different tables in the same flow. It's a bit clunky, but it works. So that's how you're able to achieve that if you are using a separate table for your templates. And you can have extra columns in that. I didn't have it before, but columns for sensitivity or anything else you can think of that you want added into that team. You can specify in that row under the team type table, and then just create extra variables as you need here. And yeah, essentially, if you've done that, you can kind of skip switching. Yeah, that goes away, and really you're just grabbing whatever that type ID is and whacking into here. So replacing that one with the new ID, and then child flow kicks off. And we also get rid of some of the switching in here as well. But yeah, that's how you manage the new templates, and also it optimizes your flows a bit there. So maybe in my third iteration of this, if I ever have to do this again from scratch, I might consider that. But I'm sure there's already good working solutions out there available by other people. So more of a fun project to do some learning, because I think some of the flow in a day workshops, they're fairly basic connectors. So none of this jumping across tables and multiple flows and stuff like that. I won't try to, if I can't get to the form anymore. I created the site for it. Bear with me. But any questions in the meantime?
I think you talked about being able to add messages into the newly created teams. Did you do any of that?
Didn't do any of that. That's a good one. I can probably just show you a thing. Down here, we'll pretend we've already done all that. So there is a connector for Teams that gives you the action of send a message. Select that first, and post. Sorry, the terminology, right? So you can have it as a chat message or in a post in the channel. It can be a card. You can adaptive cards, stuff like that, where you can add extra buttons and other information. And it can either, well, because we're using service account, like this one, you can post as the flow bot, or as a user, or as a Power Virtual Agent in preview. Noting that Power Virtual Agent's been renamed, rebranded to Copilot Studios, Chatbot Copilots, the small c, which is a bit of a segue afterwards. But I'm going to try and get to that form for you. Online, have anything to say, add, ask at all?
Just in for
That's gone better than my my presentation at the conference, because we couldn't get the video working. I mean, the little box at the bottom was the thing, because we tried different cables, different ports, and at the end it was just a little converter box. Of, good. Yeah, I mean, it was like a 45-minute slot that took about 15 minutes, so it wasn't too sad. I forget what I called it. That's gonna be too hard. That's right. Yeah, we didn't jump at it, but here somewhere, some groups. Yeah, so in the group section of Enter ID, this is where you can do a bit of that governance around M365 groups and teams. So letting users create them or not, being able to set lifecycle management on it. Some of this may need extra licensing depending on how automated it gets, but you can say, hey, it should only last this long. The owners get a notification saying, should you kick this along, or can we archive this, and all that. And here's that other naming policy thing. So yeah, block words list. 5,000 words you can block. And then a group naming policy. So adding a prefix, adding a suffix, that kind of thing. But if we go back in here, where we've done the creating a team, you can put whatever prefix, suffix, words in between that you like. So it's where that customization goes a bit deeper. that was essentially that. So if we jump back down here, I've forgotten something, but come back to that. That's annoying. All right, so serving suggestions. So some other things you can consider, but briefly mentioned it, is creating folder structures and template files. So because it is a a folder in a document library in a team site, SharePoint, you can actually go, I want this folder structure. I want to provide these template files each time this team's created. So if it's, for example, the security policy team that we're generating, it would come out with the blank template, fill in these forms or these documents, and it's going to be in the same format every time. So you have like a location to start with in SharePoint to host the folder structure and the source files, and then you can get Power Automate to then copy those files across and create the folders for you. And yeah, so that will be it. Yeah, that's another HTTP request. It's an API call. That one, I believe, is not a native one, so you will have to set up the custom HTTP connector, so the premium licensing, and pretty much you collect the site URL, so whatever, sharepoint.com/site/whatever, and then you build out the folder path, and the file name is based on what the source file is, and then you create the total file path and file name as well. So it worked when I did it. It was kind of out there, but it's something else you can do on top of this. So it's not, you're not just limited to adding tabs and apps. So you can actually have files in there as well. Good thing. Sensitivity labels we touched on. So if you're doing things in Microsoft Purview, so if you want to make sure that anything in that team doesn't get shared externally, or if it's certain life cycle, or it's certain whatever regulation you've got, you can apply labels. So when we said in the team type table, we can add a column for whatever the name of the sensitivity label is. If we want to dive more into sensitivity label, we can have a separate section or session on Purview. Happy to do that next time or next year, some point, whatever comes first. But yeah, that can tie into the whole governance piece as well. So I just showed you before being able to set some of that, naming conventions and block words, but having life cycle sensitivity would be the next step. Okay, yeah, so it's another HTTP request. It's a patch request to then add the label ID. So a bit of fun there, setting up labeling for groups, teams, and sites. And then spicy addition, Copilot Studio options. So instead of using a Microsoft form, you could use a SharePoint form based on a list. You could use Notepad if you really wanted to, but you can create a Copilot chatbot which poses those same questions, and when you respond to it, you can then store those responses as variables and then pass those through that flow, kick off the similar process. But it's just another way to interface it. There are things like Copilot in SharePoint coming soon, which I guess you can kind of tie into this. It's more based on what's locally in that site or page, but I'm sure you can embed stuff. The other option is Power Apps. So create a form based on the Canvas app. You can embed that in SharePoint. You can stick it in Teams. You can run it out of the mobile app if you really wanted to. So you've got many ways to grab the information, and you just have to get it captured into the table there. And that's pretty much it. Sorry, I lied. There's one more food reference. Enjoy. But yeah, that's pretty much the high to medium level view of being able to create these fairly customized Teams templates, leveraging their Power Automate, bit of Dataverse. Knowing that I didn't use Dataverse in my first iteration, I did use a SharePoint list, still better than using an Excel file. So yeah, so that is me done for this topic. Any questions before I move on? Last chance. That is very quiet. Very good, because I don't have any hecklers this time. So the BizApps guy I hit up, his name's Ian Bennett. He's one of the other presenters there from New Zealand, and I just hey, got any feedback? And he provided that one on, what happens if you have more than one, or you want to add more, you do. And I said, oh, you just created another choice, and he said, oh, well, yeah, you could just add a table.
That sounds very fun.
Yeah, so I guess the more, I guess word was the right word, the more skilled in biz apps and all that, they'd probably see these kind of things and go, oh, just do it this way. And whereas starting out, or if you've dabbled like I have, some stuff, but there's always going to be better ways and optimizations. Okay, well, that's my button. That's a wrap for this month. What can I add? Yeah, so Pete, if you want to cut the recording, otherwise we'll see you next month for Intune remediations. PowerShell, I think it is, but Intune. More in line with our IT Pro